welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's story centres around one of England's oldest and probably best known myths or legend. That legend being the Shuck of Yorkshire, a werewolf dogman-like creature said to roam and cause havoc into anyone's eyes that dare come across it. Without further ado, let's get into tonight's story, the Shuck of Yorkshire. It was 3 years later, after the mysterious events surrounding Richard and his death and previous disappearance. My parents had moved us back to Yorkshire. I had failed to settle back into normal life after word had spread like wildfire about my statement to the police. I felt like an outcast, afraid to go outside, let alone back into school. The whisperings in classrooms, the mocking behind my back was too much to take. So we left and returned to our roots back up north. Several months later, and I had formed a friendship with school twins Hannah and Simon. They had developed a huge interest in the supernatural and anything related to it. I felt comfortable in myself for the first time since that fateful day at St. Michael's Church. I received no mocking from them or doubt. Acceptance of my experience was offered, and I took that. There wasn't much they knew about what I had witnessed, but what they did say is that it was definitely a demon of some kind. Without any photographic evidence, they couldn't say for sure what I had encountered. Alright, it was not the closure I was looking for, but I had some sort of answer. A demon? Well, it made some kind of sense, I guess. I would always wonder what kind of demon it was, but I wasn't curious enough to go find out personally. It could stay exactly where it was. A few weekends before my birthday, they suggested going camping. They were on the hunt for local ghosts, whose name and description escape me now, and they wanted to get photographical evidence of its existence. For the first time in my life, I had developed a genuine curiosity of the supernatural. Was I a nerd now? Saturday morning arrived and 3 teenagers wandered off into the countryside on an adventure. I didn't pay much attention to what they were talking about as I was just pleased to have friends. Something about fallen soldiers, I believe, from a war a long time ago, and he had returned to his hometown. Yorkshire is supposed to be the most haunted county in England, Simon told me. Really? Sure is. That's why we want to investigate as many hauntings as we can. Plenty to go around, Hannah finished. Fancy joining us for other ghost haunting adventures? I bet you'll enjoy this one, Simon asked. Yeah, why not? Kind of interesting, really. Come 6 p.m, we had set up our tents and hoped to catch a glimpse of the fallen soldier. I was kind of excited about the whole event. They had basic equipment. As being school kids, we weren't able to compete with the pros of ghost hunting. Several hours later, and still no sightings. On the whole, we were disappointed with the no-show, but I had gotten to know them both better and enjoyed their company. Made me forget about living down south completely. I suggested that I'd go for a walk about with their camera and see if I could find anything while they prepared some food. I fancied some alone time, to be honest, to gather my thoughts and generally reflect on things. I wandered for a bit, taking in the peace and quiet of the countryside, which was a far cry from the hustle and bustle of the busy city. All was well until I heard a rustling from my left. Given that I thought I was alone right now, it took me by surprise. My senses were on full alert, and I focused my gaze on the area where the noise came from. Calming my breathing, I slowly continued walking and kept a watchful eye on the hedge nearby. Probably just some wild animal shifting about, nothing to worry about. As I walked along the field, I could hear the rustling still. Was it following me? In fact, what the hell was it? This unnerved me, and my gut instinct said run. I picked up the pace and occasionally looked over my shoulder as the noise grew louder. When I stopped to look back, I got the fright of my young life. A large dog broke through the brittle branches of the hedge and rolled on the floor as it lost its balance. It about sniffed the air and snapped its head in my direction, which is when I realised that this was no ordinary wild dog or wolf. It was larger than any dog I'd ever seen, even more brutish looking than a Rottweiler, red eyes shining in the evening sun. Black, shiny fur with a yellowish tint covered its large frame as it snorted and snarled at the sight of me standing there like a steak on a plate. My heart sank into my stomach as utter dread filled my every fibre. Without any moment's hesitation, I turned around and ran as fast as my legs would carry me. I could hear it behind me as it bounded through the grass. I saw a small stream on my left, through a gap in the hedge. Turning sharply, I made my way through the narrative gap and jumped over the stream, hoping it would at least slow it down. After this, I was out of ideas on how to get away from this hulking canine. Hitting the bank hard and losing momentum, I looked over my shoulder with tears streaming down my cheeks. The beast had stopped on the opposite bank of the stream, and I saw it was considering its options as it shifted its furry mass, turning its head side to side, surveying the stream and then me. Its coat shined in the dim sunlight, and those piercing red eyes stared deep into my very being. Lifting its head about high up into the air, it let out a bone-chilling howl. Was it calling others, or was it mourning a missed opportunity for a sweet meal? Hyperventilating, I scrambled to my feet and broke into a fast sprint as a 1,000-metre Olympian would on the final straight. Howls filled the still air as I ran as fast and as far away as I could from my predator. Unsure of where I was, I slowed down, gradually halting my speed to a walk and took in the scenery. Lost. I was lost, and I had no idea where on earth I had run to. Even in the distance, I couldn't see any sign of our campsite. Unperturbed, I carried on in the direction I was going. After all, I'd eventually find a road or a house, surely. It was getting dark, very dark outside now, and I could see moving lights and heard sparse traffic. A road! People! I was saved. I sprinted again towards the direction of a travel road and felt relief wag over my tired and aching body. The road was deserted when I arrived, and I stood on the side of the road, hoping to wave down a car and get a lift back to town. A few minutes later, a wall of light rose over the brow of the hill, and I noticed a HGV. I waved at the driver and hoped he would give me a lift in the direction he was going. I didn't care where it was, I just wanted away from here. The engine changed its pitch as he slowed his vehicle down and pulled over. My saviour. He shuffled over to the passenger window and opened it, staring down with a look of disbelief as a teenage boy stood on a deserted road. "What the hell are you doing out here at this time?" His incredulous expression told me he'd never had this happen to him before. I was being chased. A stuttering response was all I could muster. To hell with regulations, jump in, kid. He opened the door, and I climbed aboard his cab. Relief washed over me as I relaxed in his passenger seat, shivering from cold and the adrenaline buzz. He asked me my name and where I lived, but I stayed silent for the most part. Lucky for you, this is your way home. I'll call ahead and have the police pick you up, kid. Roger Jacobs was his name, a stand-up guy to help me out the way he did. Once I was with the police, I gave a statement and explained everything. I received a raised eyebrow in return and was taken home whilst another unit was dispatched to collect Hannah and Simon. The next day, Hannah and Simon paid a visit to check up on me. What happened? Hannah's concern would prove to be well placed in the near future. I saw this huge dog, piercing red eyes that looked at me like I was the next meal. Its fur was just black, but also looked yellow. I managed to get away, thankfully. Oh my God, Carl. Hannah raised a hand to her mouth and looked like she was about to cry. That dog you saw is no ordinary dog. You don't need to tell me twice. The thing was bloody huge. Listen to me. It's called the Shuck. It's an omen of impending death to those who see it. I knew that she wasn't a liar and wouldn't say anything to scare me, but I found this hard to believe. Really? One word, and full of sarcasm and disbelief. I'm telling you the truth, Carl. Be careful, please. She held my hand, and her genuine nature was apparent. I just couldn't absorb what she had said, as it sounded too ridiculous to be true. Just 3 days later, I was waiting at home for my parents to return from grocery shopping. I stayed at home to finish my homework instead. Not something I usually do, but I just felt it was the right thing to do. A firm knock at the door broke my concentration. Sighing, I left my bedroom and wandered downstairs and answered the door. Standing on the doorstep was a pair of police officers with a solemn look about them. Carl Atkinson, this is WPC. Notes. The WPC spoke with remorse in his voice. Yes? Nerves crept in quickly. We'd like to speak with you. Can we come in, please? I spent the next 15 minutes shell-shocked by the words that hung in the air, my ears and brain at first refusing to accept what they meant. You see, my parents were on their way home when a lorry driver had a big heart attack at the wheel and his truck didn't stop for the red light at the crossroads. My parents happened to be crossing the intersection at that precise moment. His truck slammed into the side of them and eventually came to a rest with the cab sat on top of their car. My dad died on impact. No pain and no suffering. Not even a clue as to what happened. My mother was not so lucky, however, as the fire crew couldn't cut her out of the car. The dashboard had collapsed under the weight of the cab and pinned her to the seat, with mangled metal cutting through a main artery in her leg. She died from severe blood loss during the attempted rescue at the scene. I was an orphan now, and the shock was too much to take in. My parents weren't coming home. As for the cab driver, it was unfortunate that he suffered a major heart attack. He died at the wheel and would never know the carnage that followed his death. I didn't blame him for it. After all, you can't blame someone for having a heart attack. The following few days were just a blur, as I ran on autopilot and barely spoke a word. A retired couple nearby offered me a place to stay, and I said I could stay there for as long They said I could stay there for as long as I want. They took me to my parents' funeral, even though they never knew them, and did everything for me to help me through an incredibly difficult time. Barbara and Reginald, amazing people, and I can't thank them enough. I did overhear them talking about the lorry driver a few days later. Turns out it was their friend's only son. His name was Roger Jacobs. Wow. I hope you guys enjoyed that story. Always love anything that's from the history of England, the myths, the legends, the dark side, the ghosts and paranormal activity that this country has to offer in the history. And I hope you guys did enjoy it as well. Please do let me know below in the comments. Please do like and share. And as ever, folks, remember, be safe, not sorry.